No, I did see Antlers. Yeah, yesterday actually. Saw Antlers and another pre-screening, and there were reps there who, I mean, they do a lot of the same stuff. Ask you not to talk about it too much and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, but similar to yours. I mean, I think that they wanted a overall consensus from us after the movie, and to which case I gave them a big thumbs down. I'll be honest with
I was gonna
everybody.
say, there was a couple people in my pre-screening who went to go see Antlers, and they all hated it.
Oh wow, okay. I didn't hate this movie. That hate's a strong word. Okay, so like first of all, let me say this. Like I like Scott Cooper. I think he's a good director. I've seen yeah, I mean Out of the Furnace and Black Mass. I mean really great movies. I think he's a good director. So this actually surprised me that I didn't like it as much as I didn't like it because so I mean I'll give you the premise because you have a premise of on one end you got Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons who are playing brother and sister in this movie, and Kerry Russell comes home because excuse me, she kind of there was a tragedy. Well, there was a tragedy in both their lives that connects together, and I won't give that away for the people that are going to go see it, but um for me that was one of the things that kind of actually dragged the film down is the fact that their story, they have this big tragedy in their lives that happened to them, and the story is trying to focus so much on that and ultimately ends up being nothing. It culminates into, I feel like, almost nothing with what's going on with them. And so that's one of the storylines you're following, but at the same hand she's a teacher in the film, and she befriends this young boy in the film, which is pretty much the plot that does culminate to be something. It just I just didn't feel a lot of payoff, even though it did become something. If that makes sense, there just wasn't a whole lot going on there. It's a well shot movie. I'll say that. Like it's pretty to look at in a lot of the spots. I mean, it does have really creative style and good shots in a lot of areas, but this plot, man, I'm telling you, it brought it down. It's got like it's got the dialogue also dragged it for me. Like I wasn't too thrilled with the dialogue a lot of the time. Like I thought it's just something about the script just felt very amateur, if you ask me. Like a lot of it just felt like it was like, huh, like that's an interesting choice of line, to put there. Like even like sometimes they would go for like jokes and they just didn't land. And that was another big problem for me is that the script. I mean, there was a bully kid in this film. I mean, you'll see him toward the beginning, so it's not like a spoiler or anything, but there's a bully kid in this movie, and like he says the stuff that you after it comes out of his mouth, you're like, no kid acts like that. Like no kid, I don't care how mean you are, you don't say that kind of thing. Because it just, yeah, it just seems so outlandish sometimes. And so like that was a big letdown. Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons are phenomenal stars though, and they, with the lines that they have, they do a good job together, and I don't think that was the problem. They actually have good chemistry, and they're good. It was a good lead cast to get, so like I don't want to knock it too much because they do well with what they have to work with. It's just that this movie, it has pacing problems at the wazoo too. I mean, like I'll be real, like it's very boring. It's very boring. It's very poorly paced to the fact that it gets very boring, gets very muddled, gets very dragged down. This is very much it's a horror flick, but it's very much a creature feature. So there's a monster in it. Um, for those of you who didn't catch on to that from the title, there's a monster of sorts. I won't say too much about it. There are some things to spoil about that I won't say.
Well, I
About
believe the director Scott Cooper has already he mentioned one thing about this monster. I don't know if I can say it here or not.
probably not, just at least not in this portion of it. Maybe we could talk about it after. But the thing that I would say um about this is like there are parts that you look at it and some of the stuff is going to scare some people. It didn't scare me. It didn't necessarily scare me. But I did look like I did look at some of the parts though, some of the scenes, some of the sequences. I'm not gonna lie, I did look at and go, oh, that's gnarly, that's gnarly. It's definitely there are neat moments for sure. Like, I don't want to like throw that out either, because it does have neat moments, and again, it's well shot. It's well shot in a lot of ways. Like, there's things you look at and you're like, oh, that, you know, that's gonna scare some people for sure. Um, it's few and far between though. That's the thing. Like, the stuff that does happen is very few and far between. So you don't really get a lot of building on the stuff that's supposed to be scary in the movie, and I don't know if that's necessarily the problem I had. I mean, I could say that it needed more of that. It needed more of the creature per se, and things going on there. Even though I understood everything happening with it, I thought we could have built it better, rather than, because there's a big scene of exposition that just like, it's a big exposition dump. It just goes out of its way. It's like the movie comes to a screeching halt to explain everything to you, and I didn't like that so much. I think the things that scare me are, it's like, for me, like, the things that scare me is the shit that I can't see, not so much the shit I can see. That's what typically scares me in movies, and in this movie it kind of lays all of its cards out, and that was another big issue I had. Is that, like, from the very beginning, not from the very beginning, but almost close to the beginning, like, you pretty much know what you're scared of, or what you're supposed to be scared of. And to me, that takes away from a lot of it, you know, for me. Other problems I had here, it's definitely come down to, you know, I hate the gimmick jump scare. I hate the gimmick jump scare. And that's something that, it wasn't played a lot in this movie, but it was done a couple times where I was like, come on, you know, because like, you could have not, it wouldn't have saved the movie, honestly, whether they'd done it or not, wouldn't have saved the movie. It wasn't like used so often that it was like a big deal, the gimmick jump scare, but like, it was still like, come on, you know, because there's a couple of jump scares in here that are really good and not gimmicky. Honestly, there's a couple of those jumps. But again, it's all just so few and far between, and you don't really get a lot of it. Like, I don't know. Like I said, like, this will scare some people. Some people will watch this and be like, it's going to be the kind of thing that freaks them out, just based on the imagery and stuff. Because again, there's imagery in here where I looked at it, I was like, that's really neat, that's really creative, you know. But you know, and that's going to terrify people. But you know, for me, again, I like stuff that I can't see. If I can't see it, the better off I am, or the easier you're going to scare me if it's something I can't see on the screen. When you show me everything that I'm supposed to be scared of right off the bat, it takes away a whole element. And I think that's where this movie really lost me too, is that I just always kind of knew what I was looking out for, you know, and it laid all its cards out. Didn't didn't pull any punches, and I want them to pull punches in this type of a movie. You know, I want them to surprise me. I want them to throw things at me I'm not going to expect. And while there are maybe one or two things that maybe I didn't expect, for the most part, I just kind of saw where it was going, you know, I guess. And that was another thing too, that I found that to be kind of bland about it. And the whole movie just feels very dry, very bland, even though it has nice creative style behind the camera. Scott Cooper does do a good job behind the camera. Like I said, the shots are great, but you'll see from the beginning, like, it's well shot. Like, when you watch it, and like, there's a shot in the very beginning, I was like, oh, that's pretty, you know. That's a really nice shot. Clearly the guy knows what he's doing on that front. It's just when it came down to the plot, the script, just about everything else, the acting was great again. But even the kid that acted in this, really good stuff, man. I mean, he's a really good child actor, the main kid. So like, I can't, you know, judge that at all. I know for a long time too, this is another thing, I know for a long time Guillermo del Toro was set to direct this. I don't know what happened that it got passed off to Scott Cooper, but I couldn't help thinking to myself when I was watching this that this probably would have been better done in the hands of Guillermo del Toro, honestly, because that's another thing about this plot, is I constantly felt like it was a second half of a movie that I didn't see. That was another thing I kept thinking in my head. I was like, this kind of feels like there was another movie that was supposed to go before this, and this kind of feels like a sequel to something, you know, in a way. And like, I felt like if Guillermo del Toro, because this it's 90 minutes long, it's not long at all, but I feel like if Guillermo del Toro would have done it, there would have been at least half hour to an hour tacked on before, you know, or like an extra to the beginning part. And if I had that set up, I probably could have like appreciated what was going on in this part of the story. But because I didn't, it just felt like a lot of things just weren't paid off. So that was another thing I just constantly kept telling myself. I was like, I bet you if Guillermo del Toro had stuck on and done this film, we probably would have gotten something different. Because Guillermo del Toro always, his movies are always in this grand scale, and like I think that Scott Cooper's not, and that's fine. That's just his style, but it just doesn't work for this type of movie. I commend him for trying to do a horror film, you know, and trying his hand at it. I respect that a lot, you know, because I don't want it to, like, this movie's not garbage, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want anybody thinking like this movie's complete garbage. It's not. There are a lot of respectable things in this movie that, like, a lot of horror movies that I don't like wouldn't have gone out of their way to do. You know, there are like garbage horror movies out there that don't go out of their way to try to do certain things. This movie does feel like it's really trying. It really does. It feels like an effort. It's just an effort that unfortunately didn't pay off. That's kind of how I felt about it. It's a good effort. You know, hard work was probably put into it. I'm not trying to take that away from anybody who worked on it. It felt like it was, you know, they were trying. They were going for it. And just like sometimes you just take that risk and it doesn't pay off. Sometimes. And then that's like an unfortunate fact of life. Again, for some people, I reckon this movie's going to work, you know, and some people are going to walk out of it. Again, we had to give the consensus on the way out of it, and it was actually very mixed, you know, and because there were some people that were positive on the way out, and like I got to respect that too. Listen, I mean, come on, I'll be real. I'll go ahead and grade this. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give this a no-go. You know, I'll be completely real. I was very, like, walking out of it. My whole thing is I'm mixed negative, you know, so like maybe if even if it's a no-go, it's probably on the higher end of no-go, but it's a no-go, unfortunately. So there's that. So, you know, but hey, let me know what you guys think of Antlers if you see it, and let us know in the comments for sure, because I'd definitely be curious to hear other opinions on it or other takes. I got it. For real, if you guys liked it, for real, give me your takes, because I'll tell you what, I mean, I was looking for any reason to enjoy this movie watching it.